The story begins with a young and terrified boy running out of the woods as fast as he can. After running as far as he is able, he collapses, completely worn out. He disgustedly bangs his fists on the ground. Afterward, the scene cuts to a red-colored mini-school bus boarded by some school-going teenagers. On the bus, Nolan gazes at Bess, as he has a crush on her. Through a radio broadcast, it is announced that lunar eclipses have fascinated humankind throughout the ages. Joe asks all the children if they are interested in witnessing such a phenomenon. Carl says, "I have seen such a lunar eclipse on YouTube." Reggie, a cocky boy, throws an object at Nolan, picking on him, but Nolan brushes it off. All the students have fun, while Nolan secretly manages to gaze at Bess. On their way back home, Joe discovers several cut-off branches and logs lying in the middle of the road, blocking their path. Joe backs up the bus, while the hand of a fallen man sticks out from a nearby heap of garbage. Joe takes a shortcut, driving through a desolate route. After covering some distance, Joe finds the carcass of a deer lying on the road before the bus. So he notices it and gets out of the bus to remove it. Queenie, Carl, Reggie, Nolan, and Bess are somewhat terrified inside the bus. Joe drags that carcass into the forest, clearing his path. Just then, he hears gun clicks behind him. Carl explains to his friends that once he rode a massive pig and imitated its squealing. Seconds later, a prisoner named Pedro, who has escaped the jail, boards the bus holding Joe at gunpoint, scaring everyone on the bus. Pedro threateningly asks the students to sit down, and from now on, he will be the one talking. Subsequently, he forces Joe to drive the bus. Then, Pedro orders the young people to cast their phones out of the window, bashing about them. Reggie furiously looks at him and doesn't chuck away his phone. Pedro approaches him and demands that he do it right now or get ready to be shot dead. Reggie pulls out his phone, but Pedro promptly snatches it from him, depriving them all of any means of communication. Then he holds Joe at gunpoint, forcing him to keep driving the bus. Shortly after, they arrive in a tunnel where the bus breaks down, leaving everyone in a state of fear. Pedro asks Joe why he stopped the bus, and Joe replies that the motor has acted up. Pedro then grabs Queenie and orders Joe to fix it as quickly as possible, or he will blow her head off. Forced, Joe gets off the bus to repair the motor from the outside. Meanwhile, the power in the entire tunnel goes out, leaving everyone apprehensive. Soon, they all hear thuds that give them goosebumps. While holding Queenie at gunpoint, Pedro instructs Joe to go and look into the matter. Joe nervously walks deeper into the tunnel, endangering his life, while Pedro keeps an eye on him from a distance. With a flash of a torchlight, Joe spots an entity slouching in the darkness. Shortly, the creature gets up and savagely kills Joe, leaving everyone inside the bus witnessing this horrific sight helplessly. Pedro, with Queenie, gets on the bus and orders the horrified youngsters to keep their mouths shut. Pedro goes to start the bus himself, but doesn't find the keys there, as they are in Joe's pockets outside. Nolan says that I will go outside and fetch the keys, but Bess steps out of the bus to bring the keys. She approaches the corpse of Joe in a jittery manner, only to find his dead body severely bitten on the neck area. However, she bravely gropes in his pockets for the keys and manages to find them. Then she hears something growling in the darkness and immediately rushes back to the broken-down bus. Nolan and the others ask her about Joe. She shakes her head, revealing he is no more. Reggie pulls out all the stops to start the bus, but it doesn't work, causing Pedro to get furious with him. Pedro warns Reggie that if he can't bring the bus back into working condition, he will shoot him in the next 10 seconds. Just then, Nolan charges at Pedro, turning the tables on him. Nonetheless, Pedro says that Reggie hasn't the guts to fire a bullet, and revealing this, he snatches the gun from him. Simultaneously, they hear thuds on the roof of the bus, prompting Pedro to get out of it and investigate. He calls out to the entity to reveal itself, while the terrified students remain inside the bus, panicking. Carl says, "We are trapped in this tunnel and are about to die one by one." Shortly afterward, the malevolent creature smashes Pedro's head against the bus window, brutally killing him and horrifying all the students on board. Everyone starts panicking, but Nolan explains that if they all work as a team, they will probably make it out of the tunnel alive. Then, the radio starts chattering, creating a more tense situation on the bus. Shortly after, the menacing creature begins lurking around the bus after being attracted to the noise from the radio. Seconds later, the horrifying creature breaks into the bus, making everyone's blood run cold. The apprehensive teenagers hurriedly start escaping from the bus, while Nolan keeps the creature at bay by frightening it with a flashlight, revealing the creature is afraid of the light. Afterward, they all enter another tunnel without a second thought. All terrified and restless students descend into the basement to avoid the gruesome creature. After all, they find a safer room in the tunnel to wind down and make a plan to escape the tunnel alive. Nolan and Bess hit upon a floor map of the tunnel on the wall. Carl says that if Joe had been alive, he would have taken them out of there for sure, prompting others to grieve his death. Reggie reveals that Joe and his father were close friends and used to play basketball together. Nolan rolls out the map, explaining where they are in the tunnel at this time. He finds the control room on the map, planning to go there to restore the power throughout the tunnel. Carl, who claimed to be valiant, chooses to stay in the cabin with Queenie and Reggie, while Nolan and Bess decide to go and search for the control room. So Nolan and Bess head out in the tortuous tunnel to find the control room. Heedless Carl pretends to beat the drum with his drumsticks, annoying Reggie and Queenie. Reggie approaches him and asks him to stop irritating them. Queenie tells Reggie and Carl that she has to pee, so Reggie goes with her for safety, leaving Carl alone. While searching for the control room, Nolan and Bess stumble upon a chair with floodlights attached to it. Upon seeing the chair, Nolan reminds Bess that the creature was unable to stand the light on the bus during their encounter with them. He reveals that someone has already tried to kill the creature. Then, Bess brings Nolan's attention to a time-worn human skeleton rotting in the basement. Reggie stands aside in the corner to let Queenie pee. Minutes later, Reggie calls for Queenie, but she doesn't answer, prompting Reggie to turn around and look for her. He sees that Queenie is no longer in the corridor, causing Reggie to get restless. He immediately rushes back to Carl and explains to him everything. Elsewhere in the tunnel, Nolan and Bess enter a room only to find the main switchboard inside. Carl and Reggie look for Queenie anxiously throughout the dark tunnel. Shortly after, they hear her scream, echoing through the tunnel. Carl and Reggie follow the sound and discover the creature biting Queenie. Reggie rushes forward to save her and frightens the blood-sucking creature with fire. However, the creature knocks down the torchlight, disarming Reggie. Carl holds bleeding Queenie and continues to look for Reggie. In the other dark cabin, the creature is on top of Reggie and tries to make him its next prey. Meanwhile, Nolan pulls down the lever, restoring the power throughout the tunnel and forcing the dreadful creature to release Reggie and escape. Nolan and Bess descend into the basement, where they stumble upon several newspaper cuttings hanging on the wall. On a nearby table, Nolan discovers a diary. Seeing all this, both Nolan and Bess are baffled. In the diary, Nolan finds a picture of two siblings named Julio and Isabel, dated February 9th, 2020, with a quote, "Your end, my beginning." As Nolan and Bess are making their way back, they are frightened by loud stomping noises approaching from the front, but soon feel relieved to discover that it is their friends. Carl explains everything to Nolan while Bess spots a bite on Queenie's neck, which leaves her appalled. Afterward, Nolan and Bess show their friends the decrepit skeleton of Julio Sarpi. After reading Julio's diary carefully, Nolan explains that Julio was obsessed with a creature and he called it the Nocturne Wanderer. Nolan reveals that the creature had killed Julio's sister 40 years ago in this very tunnel, and that the young boy seen earlier in the story was actually Julio. Subsequently, Nolan begins reading aloud from the diary. Isabel and I loved going on adventures, and this evening was the perfect evening for an expedition, as we knew the place by heart. Isabel gets into the tunnel while Julio is left behind, figuring out the map. Julio explains that the creature appeared before their eyes out of nowhere. Isabel had been bewitched by the creature living in the tunnel and couldn't prevent herself from entering the tunnel. Shortly after, he hears her painful scream emanating from inside the tunnel. So he begins running off to save his life, but collapses after getting worn out completely. Julio is inside the car with his diary while the police investigate in the tunnel. 40 years later, Julio visits the tunnel again, hoping to find the creature that killed his sister 40 years ago. Julio says that you are the only nightmare that has been haunting me for years. Making up his mind to catch the creature and avenge Isabel, Julio enters the tunnel risking his life. He worked round the clock to prepare a chair decorated with several floodlights. Meanwhile, he keeps the record in his journal along the way. One day, he turns on the radio, not knowing the creature has arrived and stalks him. Shortly, Julio feels the creature's presence in the cabin, prompting him to grab an iron bar to fend off the lurking creature. However, as he encounters the creature, he loses his nerve after finding it even more terrifying than he imagined, resulting in his brutal killing, just as his sister Isabel was slain. Nolan and Bess say that we will stay here and finish what Julio started. Afterward, Nolan and his friends repair the chair, which can bring about the creature's death. Nolan pulls up the lever, causing the power to go off in the tunnel. Then, they start the radio to tempt the creature, while Reggie chooses himself as bait and sits on the chair, and all of his friends are hiding behind the walls to sneak attack the creature. Moments later, the creature shows up after being enthralled by the noise coming from the radio. Bess tries to restore the light, but finds the lever stuck. Meanwhile, the creature approaches Reggie and terrifyingly howls at him. Nolan distracts the creature by blowing a whistle while protecting himself behind a wall. The distracted creature goes in search of others and almost finds Nolan, but Bess comes in time, saving Nolan. Bess and Queenie hide in a tattered cabin while the hungry creature stands outside the door. Just then, he is distracted by the falling of an object in the distance, causing him to head into that direction. He discovers a piece of cloth stained in blood on a nearby table, unaware it is a trap. Just then, Nolan pulls the lever down, restoring the power and causing the creature to fluster. Seizing the opportunity, Queenie and Bess manage to escape the tunnel. They turn around only to find the frantic creature standing in the darkness that doesn't have the guts to step into the daylight. Shortly after, Nolan, Reggie, and Carl set the creature on fire, purging the tunnel of evils. Days later, Chris, a police officer, enters the tunnel to investigate, and shortly afterward, he feels something very dreadful around him, and then, the starving creature attacks and kills Chris, revealing himself as immortal.